Getting back to the discussion we started last hour about the attempted coup, as so characterized by DNI Tulsi Gabbard and others, that we call Russiagate, or the Russian collusion hoax, whichever moniker you prefer. I mean, just going back a little bit to, going back into time here, as we did playing some of Hillary Clinton's bites to give lie to the spin that is being offered today by Democrats, given the revelations in the documents that Tulsi Gabbard declassified about the direction Obama gave to essentially change the presidential daily bulletin that would have been available to be viewed by then President-elect Trump in December of 2016. To go from did not impact to something else. July 24th, 2018, an Investor's Business Daily editorial. As the saying goes, if fish rots from the head down, well, so do bad governments. Recent revelations about the behavior of President Obama and his CIA Director John Brennan in pushing the bogus Russian collusion investigation suggest that's been the case. The release of the FISA application by the FBI to investigate alleged collusion between Russia and Trump's campaign and recent comments made by top officials are eye-opening. Not only did President Obama know about the investigation, he seemed to have pushed it from the very beginning. But don't take our word for it. Here's what his DNI, James Clapper, told Anderson Cooper, quote, "If it weren't for President Obama, we might not have done the intelligence community assessment that we did that set up a whole sequence of events which are still unfolding today, including special counsel Robert Mueller's investigation. President Obama is responsible for that. It was he who tasked us to do that intelligence community assessment in the first place." That's true, based on the memos that Tulsi Gabbard declassified. James Clapper telling the truth. That may be the most shocking thing of all here. But that's substantiated by the evidence, and that's what we should do, go where the evidence leads. Well, so if that's true, and President Obama's own DNI so stipulates, and the physical evidence substantiates, then yeah, it is not folly to suggest that former President Obama be included in this criminal investigation, as far as I'm concerned. I know he doesn't have the perjury and conspiracy to perjure exposure that maybe a Comey and a Brennan have because they testified under oath. But there are other federal statutes that may be applicable. And let's remember, so I mean, I go back to this 2018, 7 years ago, because we have known or suspected so much of this for so long and been given the back of the hand, the dismissive non-answers, the name calling in lieu of answers, because if the facts aren't with you, attack your opponent. We get that. I mean, this was back in 2020, Trump's infamous interview with Leslie Stahl on 60 Minutes, where any suggestion of any of this was treated as fake news, out of bounds, misinformation campaign. And until you get in and you can unearth it yourself, all you can do is spar with the media because they're not going to exercise the due diligence required or hold their fellow travelers accountable. They've proven that.
The biggest scandal was when they spied on my campaign. They spied on my campaign.
Well, there's no real evidence of that.
Of course there is.
No.
It's all over the place. Leslie,
Sir,
they spied on my campaign and they got caught.
Can I say something? You know, this is 60 Minutes, and we can't put on things we can't verify.
You won't put it on because it's bad for Biden.
We can't put on things we can't verify.
Leslie, they spied on my campaign.
Well, we can't verify
It's been totally
that.
verified.
No.
It's been, just go down and get the papers. They spied on my campaign, they got caught.
No.
And then they went much further than that, and they got caught. And you will see that, Leslie, and you know that, but you just don't want to put it on the air.
As a matter of fact, I don't know.
How about now, Leslie? And what do we get from John Brennan and Jim Comey, the two named subjects of open DOJ investigation? You know what they do. It's the hi-hat. Moral indignation to cover for moral turpitude. More declassified docs show Comey swayed by mysterious intel reports to end Clinton email inquiry. A newly declassified appendix to a years-old Justice Department watchdog report shows that then FBI Director James Comey was swayed to preemptively announce the end of the Bureau's investigation into Hillary Clinton based on mysterious classified intelligence reports, and that the FBI failed to investigate thumb drives containing potentially key information about use of an illicit private email server. This was a classified appendix to DOJ Inspector General Michael Horowitz's 2018 report that criticized the politicized conduct of Comey and McCabe and the leadership of the FBI. Every time you turn around, every time you scratch to the next layer, through the top layer to the next layer, the next surface layer, you get more. That confirms your worst suspicions about people that wielded the most power in the federal government for a period of time. And Jim Comey now is directing his moral indignation to, to Trump and to MAGA supporters because his family has been harmed. And he's not happy about it, but he's going to rise above it because that's what Jim Comey does, because he is a selfless public servant. Just listen to him.
The reservoir is in grave danger right now. Trump and the hacks who lead the Department of Justice are hammering at the dam day after day, trying to turn it into just another gold leaf-covered Trump subsidiary. Our best hope is that good people will stay and do what Maureen asked. Have the courage to do the right thing always. You may get fired for acting that way, but there's honor in that, and nothing but disgrace for those who don't stand up. There are going to be hard weeks in the Trump era, and this was one for my family. But there are plenty of good people still in the department committed to doing things the right way, committed to the rule of law. For them, because of them, keep the faith.
Okay, Coach. Father Comey, crime fighter. Yeah, Maureen, his daughter, as I'm sure most of you know by now, fired as a federal prosecutor, which is, the prerogative of the president, Department of Justice, just as previous presidents, Republican, Democrat, put in their own U.S. attorneys and so forth. Whatever. The point here is Comey, the same time the news about him gets worse with each document revelation. He's out there, he is the sort of the moral conscience of the nation. And he's encouraging you to not lose faith because he's out there leading the charge for truth, justice, and the American way. What a load. For more on this, James Gagliano joins us, retired FBI supervisory special agent and a doctoral candidate in Homeland Security at St. John's. He also served as mayor of Village of Cornwall-on-Hudson in New York. Jim, thanks for joining us again. Appreciate it.
It is always good to join you, brother, and I think you summed things up quite nicely. It's been kind of a busy week, huh?
Yeah, I'd say. Let's start, your old stomping grounds there with Comey and what you think about the open criminal investigation into Comey and Brennan. There are questions about perjury, questions about conspiring to commit perjury, questions about why the FBI pulled out of that daily bulletin for the president back in December of 2006 at the 11th hour and said, no, we're not signing on to a memo that says that the Russians had no impact in the outcome of the 2016 election.
Well, we can hold that two things can be true at the same time. The first is that this cabal, and I don't use that term to be overly hyperbolic, but this cabal of folks, between the president back then and the DNI chief, Jim Clapper, and John Brennan, the CIA chief, and Susan Rice and John Kerry, Secretary of State, Loretta Lynch, you go down the list, Andy McCabe, who was the Deputy Director of the FBI at the time. You can hold this as true. These folks were terrified that Donald Trump was going to win the election, and they're smarter than all of us. They're smarter than the electorate, and just because you had a duly elected president about to assume the office in January of 2017, they panicked. And in their panic, they decided to do things that are antithetical to what a democracy, an honest, good, and decent democracy should be doing. Having said that, let me just also add this. Dan, I've looked through it. And again, I'm not the oracle when it comes to this, but I've read enough of the Justice Department's tea leaves over the years to understand how things work, no matter who the AG is, no matter who the Deputy Attorney General is. In this instance, do I think people are going to jail for this? I don't. And I think there's too many escape valves here. Obviously, we have a divided country. Obviously, we have a judiciary that has to make, quote unquote, unbiased and impartial decisions. But as Tulsi Gabbard listed, and I know you've read it front to back, I did too, I just think all of these determinations, all these things that, heck, Trump could have brought out during the first term, but they kept him on his heels the entire 4 years. It's interesting. It's disgusting and reprehensible. You read it and you want to rinse off afterwards. But, Dan, I just don't see them being able to pursue anything and put any of the people that I just mentioned, in jail.
Well, I mean, that may be. I mean, I think there is clearly a case to be made for perjury for both Comey and Brennan. I mean, they're just statements they made under oath that are contradictory. And frankly, that some Comey statements made that contradict McCabe and so forth. And I think it's going to be difficult to say, well, was it just a memory lapse or some other cover story? In other words, at least, look, I don't know because I don't have all the information that the DOJ has for certain. But just on its face, there definitely is enough to investigate because I think there's a pretty good circumstantial case to make just from what's in the public domain that both Brennan and Comey perjured themselves in sworn testimony, and frankly, Clapper too, although the statute may have run on him. But something else too. I mean, I don't want to be hyperbolic either, but 18 U.S. Code 2381. Whoever owing allegiance to the United States levies war against them or adheres to their enemies, giving them aid and comfort to the United States or elsewhere, is guilty of treason. Can you not make out a aid and comfort to America's enemies by manufacturing and propagating this hoax?
Sure, and you could also look at it from the perspective that is this not projection when you have the claims and the hysteria that something was being done to undermine our democracy.
Yes.
And then you do the exact, ostensibly same thing. Look, and you brought in the former DNI, the Director of National Intelligence, James Clapper. If you want to talk about perjury, I mean, he testified in front of the Senate back in 2013. That's
right.
what you were alluding to.
Right.
And claimed that, no, his agency had not collected American citizens, the metadata of communications, which was demonstrably false. Now, he tried to clean it up in a couple of interviews.
I meant to say yes.
Yes, but nothing ever came of that. Now, in this instance, what these folks are going to hang their hat on is the interpretations. Okay, so to walk through really quickly the timeline here, we know in the months leading up to the 2016 election, the IC, the intelligence community, had consistently stated and assessed that Russia is probably not trying to influence the election by using cyber means, close quote. Now, having said that, the Russians have been trying to undermine our democracy since the beginning of the Cold War. J. Edgar Hoover wrote a great book on it in 1958 called Masters of Deceit, the former FBI director. They're still doing that. But on December 7th, with what's been released now by DNI Gabbard, after the election, the IC continued to state that foreign adversaries, and I'm quoting here, did not use cyber attacks on election infrastructure to alter the U.S. presidential election outcome.
Right.
Now, on December 9th, a couple days later, when Obama assembles his his team of co-conspirators in this realm, and I already named the people that were there. He's the one that directed them, and this is what was written up. This is per the president's request that a new IC assessment gets generated, and that is done. Now, what's going to happen is they're going to go, well, the president was acting in good faith. He just wanted to stay on top of this. They're going to be able to wiggle their way out that way, and they're not going to acknowledge that they pressured the analysts. They pressured the intelligence collection teams. They pressured them to come back with something, anything that they could come back and go, Trump was not a duly elected president. It's a masterful scheme, but they'll be able to wiggle out of it by semantics and saying no one was directly told, go and find us something dirty and help us stop him from being president.
Well, two things to that. One is we don't know who the Department of Justice may be able to flip to testify exactly to that. I mean, so there's always the possibility that
fair.
somebody who is pressured will now testify that the landscape has changed. Number two, the problem with that, it seems to me, is without any evidence to support the change in the assessment, that becomes an issue. And in addition to that, what you did after the fact, then there was the lying to the FISA court and all of the other instances of skullduggery. So if you had a good faith, we want to kick the tires on this in a good faith way, and you came up with some basis to change the assessment, that's one thing. If you don't have a basis, and then you engage in all sorts of, illegal, in some cases, acts to extend essentially to leverage this new assessment to extend this scrutiny over Trump in an unprecedented way, spying on a presidential campaign, spying on a president. Then, boy, I think that's a completely different thing. I don't think you get to just sort of, and I don't think Bondi will let them just sort of skirt around this by saying, it was a good faith effort just to make sure all the T's were crossed and I's were dotted. I mean, come on.
Fair points. However, you know me, I'll push back a little and I'll say this.
Okay.
The president, and you've been critical of the president when he deserved to be criticized, does not help matters when he weighs in publicly and it is interpreted and justifiably so that he's putting pressure on the judiciary or he's putting pressure on the attorney general's office. That doesn't help.
Well, it doesn't.
Andrew McCabe was fired and got his job back and a chunk of change. Peter Strzok was fired and then he didn't get his job back, but what he did was he received millions of dollars. And the reason being is because the president was saying things that would poison any jury pool and came off as partisan. And Dan, my prediction here is this. Him talking about this and pushing this so hard, even though he is talking about legitimate things, he's talking about legitimate, whether or not they rise to the level of a crime that would be prosecuted. I think that's a fine line, but it is possible. He's just not helping the cause.
Well, okay. I mean, that may be the case with respect to thinking about the jury pool, but just on the merits of the case, as Lee Smith noted in his piece in Tablet, it's worth noting the only genuine piece of Russian intelligence U.S. spy services ever received during the Trump-Russia probe was intelligence that Russia knew the Clinton campaign was behind the effort to dirty Trump as a Russian agent. And so they knew the Steele dossier was bogus, and they ran with it anyway. And they knew there was no basis to unleash all of the forces that allied against Trump in media, in government, in the criminal justice system. But they did it anyway. They knew for months and months and months. They knew there was no there, and they did it anyway. I mean, that to me is a strong case for potentially a expansive reading of federal statutes like the treason one.
I don't disagree with that. Now, that term gets thrown around with such cavalier indifference sometimes.
I hear you.
and it is a malevolent term. And in the legal system, as you well know, it has a specific, just like an insurrection, it has a specific legal definition. So your point's not, I mean, it's not lost on me. It's just that we have to understand a couple things here. One is, first and foremost, the Russians did not impact our election infrastructure. And that was what the initial survey and the initial intent of the investigation into this by the IC, the intelligence community, was to determine, are they changing votes? Did Trump win because they were able to change votes? And the answer was no. The second piece is much more nuanced and abstract. Did the Russians contribute to Trump's victory by posting Facebook ads or by, trolling with bot farms and causing dissension? They want to make sure that this democracy is fragile and fallible and falls apart. Beyond that, so much of this is going to come up in the court of public opinion first. And, Dan, that's where it is right now.
Yeah.
And is it the right thing to do? Is locking up Comey, who I despise and loathe.
Yeah.
You know that. However, is that going to heal the divide? Is it going to? And again, it's about justice, and I get that.
I mean, but
he's got a high return. Go ahead.
No, I mean, just like, I mean, I'm saying this sort of generally, not directing you, but like the heal the divide stuff. I mean, that is I mean, we're talking about the justice system. I mean, the divides because of different opinions about the justice system or whatever. I mean, you still have to act in furtherance of the principles of the justice system, starting with equal protection under the law and equal treatment before the law. And right now, Comey and Brennan and perhaps others are getting a pass. So does it heal the divide? No. But would Comey and Brennan behind bars be justice? I think there's a strong circumstantial case right now, and this is up to Bondi to put together something that's even stronger than that. I think right now there's a strong circumstantial case that it would be justice, and that's what I'm interested in. And if people don't like it, well, that's just tough.
Yeah, no, I get it. But, I mean, go back and look at what they did to Trump and his team. I mean, look.
Yeah, I know. That's exactly the point. Yeah.
Michael Flynn, Rick Gates, Paul Manafort, George Papadopoulos, all the folks that work within the campaign. But I just don't know if at this point in time remember, prosecutors don't go in always and take cases on, even if they know. Remember, it's not what you know, it's what you can prove.
I understand.
And what you can prove has to go for a jury, and prosecutors will use discretion and say, look, is this case a winnable case? The answer is probably no in each of those instances. But to your point, is it the right thing to do because you're supposed to pursue justice? And that's the $1 million question.
Yeah, well, you're supposed to pursue justice, and you're also supposed to send a message about people who to people who weaponize the justice system. We're going to at least impose the punishment of process on you. And, maybe it's 50-50 before a jury, but we're going to at least do to you legitimately what you did to other people illicitly. So we send the message that there are consequences to weaponizing the justice system the way that you bozos did for the last 4 years or 8. I mean, that needs to be part of the calculation in my mind, too. Even if I would put that under the category of substantive due process in addition to the strictures of procedural due process. But, that's me, and I'm not the Attorney General.
I can't disagree with you on what you just said. That was well put together.
Thank you. Appreciate that. James Gagliano, retired FBI supervisory special agent and a doctoral candidate in Homeland Security at St. John's. He's also served as mayor of Village of Cornwall-on-Hudson in New York. James Gagliano, thanks as always for joining us. Always a great discussion.
Dan, thanks for having me. Take care.
You too. And he joined us in the Turnkey.Pro answer line. Coming up at 7:37, we'll turn our attention to matters of border security and immigration policy. Hunter Biden had a lot to say on immigration policy in his sit-down with that podcaster. Very entertaining. Sam Olson, the field office director at ICE Chicago, for the ICE office in Chicago, probably will find it less entertaining. We'll talk to Sam Olson, 7:37.
Good morning. It's 71 degrees in Chicago. In the AM 560 The Answer Newsroom, I'm Bob Stevenson. Illinois Governor